In this video, we'll be building a to-do list application using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then we'll deploy the web app to the web with Hostinger. So this is the application we're going to be building. As you can see, it is a simple to-do app which has a memory. So if we refresh the page here, it's actually using local storage to store the items as well, so you'll never lose the data. As you can see here, we can tick off different items. We can edit them to add in whatever we want. And we can also delete them as well. And if we hit refresh again, you'll see this is still saved there. We can edit this again just to make it normal. We can also add new to-do list items such as get milk. And there you go. If we hit refresh again, you can see this is still there and it is saved to local storage. Before moving on, I just want to mention this video is sponsored by Hostinger, an all-in-one hosting service. You can use my discount code or referral link to get an additional discount for all yearly plans. You can find the details down below in the description. Wait until the end of the video to find out more about Hostinger and how we can deploy our web app to their platform hassle-free. Okay guys, so we're going to start off with a blank folder opened up in Visual Studio Code. The first thing I'm going to add is an index.html file to be our markup for this app. We're then going to have a main.css and a main.js all in this folder. Let's start off in the HTML. Inside of here, we just want to create a boilerplate, just like this. I did that by pressing exclamation mark and tab inside of Visual Studio Code, and it auto completes a basic web page for us. And then we could just rename this to something like our task app in 2020, not 4, that we'll get to that next year, in 2023. We'll then want to actually import Google Fonts icons. Google icons is what we're going to be using to actually get the icons on the page. So you can see here we have the Google of fonts.google.com/icons. You can actually see the different ones here. Now, if we switch this to icons, this is what we're going to be using. So we can head over to the developer guide, scroll down, and it will give us this link here, how we can set up our font family set. So we just copy this, head back to our HTML and paste this in up here, and we can break this back up there. And there you go. Now we have a link to our material icons. We then want to link to our local main.css file, and at the very bottom of our page, we are going to link to our main.js file. So for the markup of our app, we're going to start off with a main tag to wrap everything in. We're then also going to have a class of app to have an additional layer or wrapper around our web app. We're then going to use a header tag to define the header of our little app here. And inside of here, we're going to have a H1, and you can give this title anything. You can also style this however you want. I'm just going to give you a rough guide here. So we're going to call this your to-dos. This will just be the title that shows in front. Underneath this, we want a button with the ID of create. Now, if you're wondering how I just did that there, and I typed button, hashtag, and then create, and hit enter, and it filled it out for me, that's actually an extension that's actually built in to Visual Studio Code using something called Emmet, which is an extension. So if you're using Visual Studio Code, you should be able to auto-complete like that as well. So further, let's scroll down, and then underneath header, we want a div with the class of to-do list and the ID of list. And this is where we're going to have all our to-do lists. Now, in theory, this is now finished for our markup, but for our styling purposes, I want to add in a item pre-made just so we can style it up to get started. I then want an input of type checkbox. We do not need a name or ID for this. This will all be handled inside of JavaScript. We then want an input of type text. Again, we do not need the name or the ID for this. And let's just remove that there. And we're just going to give this a value to start with of to-do content goes here. And we'll also set this to disabled by default because we will have it disabled. I'm going to break this down so it's easier to read. There we go. Then underneath this, we're going to have a div of class actions. This is going to have our two button icons. Now, to use the material icons, we need to add a class to whatever we want. And the class for this one is going to be material-icons. We're then going to type in a code inside of here, or just basically a reference to what icon we want. To get that, we need to go back to our material icons and search for it. Now we want to look for an edit button such as this one here. So if we click on this, you can see under here, it tells us the code we want to use, and it actually shows you how you can use it here. This shows you with a hyphen outlined, but we're actually just using the standard one. So we're just going to select the edit here, take it back into our code, and we're just going to paste the edit text here. Now I'm going to get the next one here, which is going to be the material icons, but we're also going to add the class of remove button as well, just because we want to style this one slightly different. Now I already know the code for this one we want to use, and it's going to be remove circle. So if we just type in remove circle in here, we should get, you can see here, this is the one we want to get. So we're now done with material icons. We can also close this. If we go back to here and hit refresh, you can see all of our stuff is there. Let's bring this to the side, bring this over and break it down like that, just to make it easier to actually see, and we can do this side by side. So currently this doesn't look too great, so let's head into our CSS to style things up. Now, as with all my projects, I always start by just getting rid of all the margin and all the padding on any of the projects. I'm then going to also set the border sizing to the box sizing, sorry, to border box, and a font family of sans serif. Hit save, refresh, and you can already see that's looking better. I then want to get our button and just remove the default styling, because we're going to be styling these separately. We want to remove the backgrounds, the outlines, and also the border as well. Set these all to none, and that should remove all of the outlines. You can see there the actual buttons there. But you can see it's lost our cursor. So to get our cursor back, we just want to say cursor pointer. Hit save, and you should, if we refresh, see that when we hover over the buttons, our cursor comes back. Also, back in here, I realized we created our create button, but we didn't add any text. For this, we just want to say add to-dos or add new to-do. Hit save, and there you go. You can see that's now there as well. Now, I like having my screen in more of a dark mode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a body with a background color of a darker element. We're going to say 242948. And I'm also just going to set the color of everything to white within inside the body. And there you go. You can see that's kind of worked, but the buttons have not. But we'll come around to that in a moment. We then want to set our main tag element, and we're just going to give this a min height of 100 VH, which is just a viewport height. The VH on this just says it's a percentage of the whole screen from top to bottom. We then want to display this as a flex level item and justify the content center. We're going to give this a padding of about 2 rem and 1.5 rem on the side. So this is going to be our top and our horizontal values. And there you go. You can see that brings it into the middle. Now, just to make this a bit wider, we're going to get our app and just set its width to 100%, but its max width to 768 pixels. So you can see that brings it right to the edge. And if we stretch this out, you'll see it actually clamps it at a certain height, because if you let it go on forever, it would look kind of weird if they were just going across the whole screen. We're then going to get the app's header. And inside of here, we're just going to display this as a flex element. We're then going to align item center, justify content space between, so it pushes both our button and our title apart from each other. And then we're going to set the margin bottom to 1 rem. And there you go. You can see that has now moved them side by side. We're going to start by styling our actual header there, because that's not exactly how we want it. So let's just style it like this. So we're going to style our H1 now. Just set the color equal to a white, the font size at about 24 pixels, and the font weight to be only 400, which will make it light. There you go. Or sorry, make it regular or normal font size. We then want to get our app header button, and we're going to style this also with the color white. We're going to set its font size to only be 18 pixels with a border bottom of 2 pixels solid, and again, white. We then want its text transform to be uppercase, and there you go. You can see the look of that over here on the right. So after the button, we want to get the item, and we're going to display the item as flex. This should make everything go next to each other in a row. We then want to align item center, justify content space between. We want to give it some padding of about 20 or about 1.5 rem. a border radius of 1 rem, a background color of just a lighter version of our one. So we're going to say 1E223D like that. We'll give it a slight box shadow, although this isn't necessarily just where it's not. Again, any of the styling isn't necessary. You can style it however you like. But here we're just going to give it a dark little one there. It's just super subtle, just so it adds a bit of difference. If we remove that, you can see it kind of adds more of a flat shading. If you enjoy the flat shade, you can use the flat shading. We then want to set the margin, not the blend mode, sorry, the margin bottom to be 1.5 rem as well. And that's just going to make sure there's space underneath this. Just to make sure the bottom one doesn't have any padding, we're just going to say item last of type. We're just going to set the margin bottom to 0. This will stop it from pushing down when it doesn't need to at the bottom. We then want to get our checkbox. And we're going to do this by checking which type the actual input has. So this is a pseudo selector where we're saying check the attributes on the input field for a type of checkbox, and that's going to basically target this checkbox here. Now the only thing we want to do here is set the margin right of 1 rem. That's just going to push this over once we stretch it out. We then want to get that input, so we can copy this and change the input to be of type text. Now for that, we're just going to set the appearance to none. Appearance to none. We're going to set the background to none, the border to none, and also an outline to none as well. We want the font weight to be 400 pixels, or 400 pixels, sorry, 400. We then want the color to be a white color, and the font size to be about 20 pixels. This is just going to make it a lot bigger. We also want this to sit on the left here instead of in the middle. Now to do that, we just need to stretch it out by saying flex 1, 1, and 0%. This will make it stretch out as much to fill the gap that's there. We then want to set the margin right to 1 rem as well, just so if it does come over here, it will be broken down or not be touching the buttons. Now we need to check for this if it's not disabled, because if this is not disabled, we want it to make it look like you can type in it. Now to do that, we're just going to copy this. And we're just going to do a not selector. Now, some people get confused with the not selected, but all this says is if it's not, whatever condition we put in here, we could say if it's not .text, you could use class, you could even say if it's not disabled, and that's the one we want to select. So we're just checking if it's not disabled, the text button. We then want to say add the border bottom of 2 pixels solid, and once again, just using that white there. Now, this is currently disabled, but if we go back in here, and we remove the disabled attribute, you can see it's now editable, and we can actually edit this inside of here. So let's just put that disabled back, because that will be the default nature of this. And there you go, you can see that there. Now we're going to actually set the items to have a completed state. Now to do that, we just want to basically add a class to our item called completed, and all it's going to do is make sure the opacity isn't as high. We'll also set the text to have a line through it. So we'll say item.completed. We will then copy this, and we will just say text decoration line through, which will make it with a line through. So if we come here and we go to IN and add the task of completed, you can see it's now grayed out, or sorry, faded out, and it looks like it's a new, or sorry, it's not usable. And there you go, you can see it's looking better again. Now I'm going to add a little thing just to show you which one you're hovering over as a little bit of fun here. So we're just going to have an item with hover, and also an item which is going to say focus within. This just means if something inside it is focused, such as this to-do item, it will also apply this styling. And that styling is just going to be an outline of 2 pixels solid and white. So now if we hover over this, you can see that's the styling we're getting. Now let's style our actual buttons there. So we want to get our actions, button, and give them a color. And I'm going to give them a gray by default, a margin right of 1 rem, and an opacity of 0.8. I'll then set a transition on this to about 1/10 of a second. And then we also want to get our button with the class of remove button, and we're just going to set the color to something like a crimson to make it red, so you can see it's a warning sort of color. We then want to get our actions buttons hover, so when it hovers it, we just want to set the opacity to 1. So now if you hover over this, you can see they brighten up a little as you hover, which is a nice little effect. And finally, we just want to say actions button last of type, the margin right needs to be 0. And there you go, that moves them back over to the right here. And you can see that's all the styling we need to do for this application to work. Now, hopefully that gives you everything you need. You can style this however you want. You don't have to follow my styling. Okay, moving on to the JavaScript, this is where we get to actually add in the fun functionality. The first thing I'm going to do is actually hide this basic to-do task, because we're going to be adding all of our to-dos via the script. And there you go. So now this is what it looks like with nothing there. Now what I want to do is just get a reference to our list element with all our items in, so this item here. Now you can see this has an ID of list, so we can do two things. We could either use a query selector or just say get element by ID, and we can say list. We can then also get our create button element, which this time I'm just going to use document.get element by ID, and again this one is just create. And there you go, that's going to get both of the elements we need here. I then want to say let to-dos equal an empty array. This is going to be our global variable that will hold all our to-dos information in, so we can display it on the screen. We then want to get our create button element, and we are going to basically create a new function. So we're going to get an event listener of click. So when we click on this button, we want to call the function here, and we're going to create a create new to-do function. So let's create that function. We're going to say function create new to-do. And now this function will be called anytime we actually click add to do. So just to test this is working, we're just going to do a simple console log and we'll say create new to do inside of here. If we open up our console here and I click add or refresh the page and click add, you'll see it says create new to do. So we know this is working. Now inside of create new to do, we're going to want to create a new to do object like this. We're going to give it an ID. Now I'm going to do a little cheat to create the ID. I'm just going to use the current time of when we create it. Now you should probably generate a random item, but if this is just a to-do list for you, this will work perfectly fine. So we're going to get an ID. We then want the text of what will be written for our to-do. And finally, we just want to know if the to-do is completed or not. So we're going to say to-do is equal to false by default. We're then going to say to-dos.unshift, and we're going to pass through our new item. Now, the reason we do this is because to-dos.unshift will add a new element to our array at the beginning of the array. If we did something such as array push, this would put an item at the end of an array, and we want it to come at the top. So when you add a new to-do, it'll be at the very top of your list. Now we're going to actually create a new to-do element here so it can be displayed on screen. But to do that, I'm actually going to create a function for this. So we're going to say const, and we're going to get something called item element back from this and input element. And we're going to set this equal to create to-do element. And we're going to pass through our item. So this will be a function we use elsewhere in the tutorial. The reason I'm creating a function for this is so we don't have to repeat our code multiple times. Now after this, I'm just going to finish this function off by saying we want to get our list element, which we get up here, and we just want to add our or prepend, so add it at the start of the list again. So prepend is at the start, append would be at the end. We want prepend. And then we're just going to pass through the item element, which is going to be created from our create to do L and passed here. We then want to get the input L. The input element, which is going to be passed back from this create to do element as well. And we're just going to set it to remove attribute of disabled by default. So when we first create a to do, it will always be disabled. But this way we're going to remove it, and then we're going to say input L dot focus, and what that will do will be focus the element, so when we create a new one it will add it here and then we can type in the text we want it to have. We're then going to create a save function which we'll comment out for now, but this will be what creates or saves our data to the local storage. So let's create our create to do function. So we're just going to create a new function called create to do element that takes in an item. Now this is quite a long function because we've got to create a bunch of items. So the first thing we want to do is if we go in here, we want to copy this and we're just going to pull it above here. Now we could delete these things here, delete this, bring it here, and then what we're going to do is I'm going to highlight this and just comment it out. We do not need that or that. I don't know why I added that around it. And this is what we're going to be creating inside of JavaScript. So the first thing we want to create is the item on the outside. So we're going to call this the item underscore element. And we'll set this equal to document.create element, which will create us a new element. And we're going to call this a div. So we just need to pass through the tag of what we want to create. We're then going to get the item element and we're going to add a class to it. So we're going to say class list dot add, and we're going to add the item class because you see this has a class there. And that is our item element completed. That's all we need. This is just the wrapper for our item. We then want to create a checkbox. So that's next on our to-do list here to create this checkbox. We need a to-do list to create our to-do list application. But we're going to call this, we're going to do the same thing above. So create element, and we're going to pass through an input this time because the element we create is an input. Then we want to say checkbox dot type is equal to checkbox. That will set its type equal to a checkbox, and that's all we need to do there. We then just want to say checkbox dot checked is equal to, so this will tell it if it's already checked or not. And what we want to do is just say the item we get passed, so we pass the item we create up here, and we just want to check if it is complete. And that way it will already mark it when we create a new element if it's completed or not completed. We then want to do a check saying item complete. So if it is complete, we want to get our top item element. And if you remember in our CSS, we add in an item.complete here. So we just want to check if this item is complete. And if it is, then we want to add another class to our element here, and this is going to be called complete. We can then say else, and we're just going to copy this and just say remove complete. Actually, in fact, we don't even need the else statement because it will not have this class unless it's created or added. We then want to get an input element, and this is going to be this element right here. And we're just going to create a new input, so we can copy this. And then we can say input L dot type is equal to text. We then want to get its value, and we want to set it to the item dot text, which is obviously what is in here. We can then get the input element and also set its attribute to be disabled. So we can say disabled, and then we need to just pass an empty string as well to tell it needs to have a value of nothing onto the element, which will then disable the input element straight away. We can then get our action element. So we want to create the action else, which is obviously going to be the, or actions L, which is going to be a new div. So we can just copy this here. And then we're just going to say action else dot class list dot add. And we can say actions like that. Underneath the action cells, we want to get the edit button and the remove button. So we're going to say const edit button element is equal to a new document.query, dot create element, and we're going to create a button this time. We then want to say edit L dot class list dot add, and we're going to say material icons. We then want to get the inner text of the button and set this to edit, just like this is here. We then want to copy this, bring this down, and we want to change this to be the remove button element. We want this, but we also want to give it another class as well. So we can pass through a comma and then another string to add 2 classes. And we're going to add in the remove button class as well. And finally, we're going to change this to be remove circle. And also we want to change this first class here to be remove button. So this will be creating our remove button. Now, next up on our list, we just need to add all of these separate elements into our item element in the correct order. So what we want to do is just go actions element, and we want to add, so we're going to say append our edit, and then we're going to pass through the edit button element to this. We then want to copy this, and this will also have our remove button element. Now underneath this, we need to get our item L and append the checkbox to it. So we just want to go in order of what needs to be put. So we first want to get our checkbox, then our text, and then our actions element all inside of our box. So we want to say item L dot append, and we can say input element, and then finally item L dot append, and this one can be our actions element. So you can see here we're double appending. We're getting the actions element and appending an edit button. And then we're getting the items element and appending these all in it, and as well as the action elements into our item. Now we need to set up some events when we create these elements. When we create these elements, we want them to actually change when we do things. So the first thing we want to do is get the checkbox and just say add event listener on change. We then want to get just an arrow function syntax here, and what we're going to say is say item.complete is equal to checkbox.checked. This will let us know if the checkbox has been checked. If it has been checked, then it will call this function, or if it's been unchecked, it will also call this function, and it will set the value of our items completed to this. We then want to say if item.complete, we just want to say item element dot class list dot add, and we just want to say complete. We don't want to just say else, and we can just copy this but change the add for a remove function, so we can remove this. So if it's completed, we'll add the class of complete, otherwise we'll remove it. And then once again, we're going to call this save function here. Now I'm just going to create a function underneath called save that does nothing right now. We'll just say save to-dos here. So it won't do anything right now, so that we can uncomment this save inside of our create new to do as well. It won't do anything yet, but this is just so later on, any change we make to our to-dos list, we're going to save it at the same time. Now we've got a few more event listeners to add. So we need to get the input element and add an event listener of input. Input just means if anything is typed into it, change it. And what we're going to do is we're going to get this, and we're going to create an arrow function again, and we're just going to set the text of this item to be equal to the input element dot value. And that will just say whatever we set, we also want to set the item in the array to this as well. Underneath this, we then want to get our input L again, but this time we're adding another event listener of type blur. So the blur event listener is essentially when you're inside of an input field and you click out of it, you blur that field instead of focusing it. So it's the opposite of a focus. We then just want to say in here, we want to say input L dot set attribute, and we're going to basically set it as disabled again, because if we are blurring it, that means we have it opened, which means we want to disable it when we blur it. And then we just want to call save in here as well. So once we blur it, meaning clicking out of it, we're going to save our to-dos. We're then going to get the the edit button element, and we're going to add a click listener to this one. So we're going to say click. We're then going to get an arrow function, and then here we want to open it up to be edited. Now to do that, all we want to do is copy this, paste it in there. We don't need the save saying that. We just need set element, and we're going to change this to say remove attribute, and we're just going to pass disabled. So when we click edit, we're going to remove the disabled, meaning we can actually edit the to do. We then just want to say element.focus. This will focus the input element, making it so it's already highlighted. So when we actually click the edit button, it will focus it for us and will not blur it immediately, causing it to close the edit input as well. Finally, we're just going to get the remove button element, add an event listener called click. And once we click the remove button, we want to basically set the to-dos equal to to-dos.filter, and this way we're actually going to filter out anything with the item.id. So anything with the same ID as the button we click or the item we click remove on, it will delete that item and set the new to-do with all the items that are not equal to the same item's ID. We then want to say item L dot remove. This is going to remove this whole item from the DOM so we can't see it anymore. And then once again, we're just going to hit the save call to save it once we remove it. Now at the very bottom of this function, we actually want to return some things. So if you notice before, we actually, when we call the create to do element, we get an item L and an input L. Now we actually want to return a few different elements. Those different elements are going to basically be all of our elements which we create. We want to get our item element. We want to get our input element. We want to get the edit button element and also the remove button element. Now, you don't actually need these last two, but I find it useful to have them all available, especially if you're going to be making and editing this in the future. So now we can get all of these items. So we can create a new to-do and it should create this. So if we refresh and we hit add new to-do, you can see we get a new to-do. And let's just say hello. If we click out of it, you can see it's no longer editable, it's blurred, which is what function we call inside of here, the blur, which has blurred it. Now, if we click edit, you can see it allows us to edit again, hello world, and if I click away, you'll see it blurs it once again. We can also hit remove, or we can hit this tick, and you can see it will change this to be ticked. Now, we can also hit remove. So that's great, that works. However, we do have an issue. It doesn't actually save, and secondly, it doesn't display all of our default to-dos. So the first thing we'll do is actually save and load our to-dos. So now we can actually create our save function. In here, we're going to say const save, which is going to be a string of JSON. So we're going to say JSON.stringify, and basically we're going to take our to-dos array and turn it into a string of a JSON string here. We can then just say local storage dot set item, and now we can give this a name. I'm just going to call it my to-dos, or you can call it something else such as to-dos or tasks, whatever you want to do. I'm just going to set it to my to-dos, and then we can also call the save function or pass in the save data here, which is the item we want to save to my to-dos. Now if we save this and we refresh, we're going to go to our application store tab here, and if we just remove the console, if we look on the left, you can see we have a local storage, and we can click on file. Now we can see a bunch of different things in here, but the only thing that actually matters is the my to-dos one. You can actually see all the ones from the demo I showed you earlier are actually in here as an item. Now we can just delete this so we can see it's working. Oh. So now if we just bring this up and you just keep an eye down here, when we create a new to-do, you can see we get a new to-do with an ID. Let's just bring this down here. You can see it's there. Now if we edit this and change it to, let's say, get milk, and click away, you can see it now says get milk in here as well, which is exactly what we want. We can also see it says completed equal to false. If we check this, you can see it changed it to true. Uncheck, it changed it to false. And the best thing about this, if we refresh the page, you can see although nothing is displayed anymore, it's still saved in our local storage, which is exactly what we want to save our items. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete that value for now. I'm going to close this, and we need to actually display our elements. So we want to create a new function. I'm going to call this above the save and load functions. I'm going to create a function called display to-dos, And we're going to basically call a load function because we need to load all our items before we display them. So let's create a function called load. And inside of load, we want to get our data back from the local storage. We're going to say const data is equal to local storage dot get item. And this is where we need to call it the same name as what we set it as. This will get the same item and bring it out. We then just want to check if there is actually data, and if there is, we can set our to-dos equal to JSON.parse data. Now, what JSON.parse does is it takes a JSON string, like we save it here, and it converts it into an object of JSON, which is, in this case, it's going to change this back into an array and set our to-dos as that. So now, if we just console.log our to-dos after we load, and then we just hit F12 here, go back to console, and if we refresh the page, we don't get anything because we actually deleted it. So let's actually add something in here, get milk. We'll add another one called subscribe to my channel, and why plug that. And if we refresh, we should get it, but we're not. Why is that? Okay, guys, I am being silly and I forgot to actually call this function. We need to call this function to actually get it to work. So we're going to call display to-dos down here, refresh, and if we go back to console, you can see it actually tells us the items here. And you can see that's loaded with our new items there, which is perfect. That's exactly what we actually wanted. I just needed to call the function. So after we load our to-dos, what we want to do is we want to create a for loop saying let I equal 0. We want to say I is less than our to-dos dot length I plus plus. It is just a for loop, which we're going to go through all of our to-do items, and we're going to create a new item, calling this to-dos I. We'll then say const, and I'm going to say item L, and we're going to get this from our create to-do element. So the reason I created a function for this instead of just putting it in here, so we can actually reuse it when we display our to-dos. And then we're just going to pass the item in here, and then we just want to get our list element and append the item element we get back from the create to-do element. This is going to get all our elements and append it back to our list. Hit save, refresh, and you can see they're now appearing here. Let's add a new to-do and just call this build a house. I don't know, just thingy. If we refresh, you can see they're now staying. And that's actually as easy as it is to build our to-do application. This is it. This is how it works. It's really easy and really simple. We can remove different to-dos. If we refresh, you'll see that item is now removed forever. So that's really cool. But next up, we actually want to deploy this to the web. As I mentioned at the start of the video, we'll be using Hostinger to deploy our web app. The reason we're going to be using Hostinger today is because of how easy it makes it to set up and deploy a website. The premium plan also includes a free domain we can actually claim to use for this project, so we don't need to purchase one ourselves. As well as a free domain, we can also get up to 100 websites with the premium plan, 100 gigabytes SSD, unlimited bandwidth, unlimited free SSL certificates, weekly backups, free emails, a website builder, and so much more. Don't forget to check out the link in the description to find out more about Hostinger, which will also bring you to this page. So I'm going to be using the premium web hosting for this video. So to get started, we're just going to add this to our cart and make our way over here. Now you can see you can choose a period that works for you. We're just going to be sticking with the default here. You can add in your email address here to give you an account, or if you already have an account, you can log in or sign in with Facebook and Google. You then can select a method of paying. We're going to just leave it a credit card, and you can see here all of the information here. Our premium web hosting 48 months plan for this total, and obviously we get the default 75% off for following the referral link. And to add an additional % off, we're just going to come over here and add in a coupon code to apply, which this is in the description down below, but you could just add in Tyler Potts here to get yourself an additional % off your plan. And then you enter in your details, hit submit secure payment, and then you'll be on your way to getting set up. Once you've actually got your account all set up and you've got your premium plan, you can head over to their H panel, which is actually a custom panel made dedicated to Hostinger, the H panel, which looks really nice. You can see it's much better than a standard C panel if you've ever seen one of those. And here we go. You can see this is our account. You can actually see I've already got some things set up. You got your premium hosting here with 2 websites. If we head over here, you can see I actually made a to-do app just testing this out to see how it would work. And you can see here we've actually got this here, and I've actually connected up my own domain for this as well. So you can see here just a little test of this as well. Now, when you first come to here, if you haven't already set up a website, it may look slightly different and it may just say create or manage or set up your premium web hosting. Once you go through that, it will get you started with the website creation process. But before we do that, since we have the premium plan, we can actually claim a free domain. So let's claim a domain. Let's call this the tasklist2023.co.uk. Let's see if that's available. It actually is available, and there we go. So we're now going to snap this domain up by just clicking claim domain, and that will get us our free domain all set up inside of our hosting here. So now we can just go in here, set up, pass through our details of the country. I'm just going to select it for personal, click next step, and then we can fill out the rest of this information. Now, once you've filled in your details, it will register the domain for you, and then we'll be able to add this domain to the website we actually set up inside of hosting. And as you can see, it was that easy to actually get that all set up. So if we head over, if you click on domains here, you'll see all the list of your domains here, and you can see any external ones you point towards hosting it as well down here. So you can see here, we have our task list 2023. If we actually go to this now, if we can actually copy it and we actually paste this in, you can see it currently doesn't go anywhere. Now that's because we haven't actually set up our domain to do anything. So let's go back to the home. So back at the home, we can actually go to manage, or for you, set up, and we can create a new page here. So if you've already got one created, you'll be able to go to selecting this and click add website, or you can actually, when you first set up, it'll ask you to set up a website. It'll be the same process. So here you go. This will be what you see once you click setup. And now we just want to create a new website. So I'm actually going to skip this and create an empty website because we've actually already built our website. I'm going to choose the domain. So we're actually going to select the task list 2023 domain, which we created. If you already have a domain as well, you can actually sell it up by going for this route, but we're going to use the domain we've added on Hostinger. Then once you've got that, you can see it's all done, and we can actually head over to manage site. You can see how quick that was as well to be set up. So now this is set up, how do we actually get our app onto this site? Well, it's actually super easy. All we have to do is upload the files straight to it. To do that, we can go down to files on the left here and import our website. So before we do this, we need to zip up our files into a zip tar or a gzip file. So to do that, let's head back here. We can highlight all of our files, right click and click compress to a zip. Now we can name this our task app, just like that. And just remember where you are inside of your things. You'll have to come back here when we click choose a file. Select choose a file, go to tutorial and select, wherever you've saved your file, and select the zip file you've just created, click open, and then just hit import. And that's going to import it. You can see its file upload successfully. Now, just to double check this, let's head over to the file manager to see our files, which should have been added to a public HTML file. You can see they're here. We can double click this and you can see there's a bunch of stuff in here. We have a default.php, index.html, main.css and main.js. So if we go back to our dashboard here, we can actually get straight to our website by clicking this or typing in the domain yourself. Let's just click this and you can see it's showing this page. But if yours does not show this page, it could be because of this default.php. Now what I've done, if I just go in there and hit delete, and there you go. That should stop any issues with your actual task app. Now let's see if this still works. So let's just zoom in here to make it easier for you guys to see. Let's add our first to do. My first to do on our website. There you go. So our first to do, let's do like the video. Let's also go through and click share the video. Oh, and one of my favorites, which you all should definitely do, is subscribe to the channel. And there you go. You can see they're all here. Let's just say we've ticked off that one. You've already liked it. You've shared it with a few of your friends and you've already subscribed. You know, you've done all of this. We'll just untick that one just so we can see it's different. Now, if we refresh the page, you can see it's still working inside of our browser. Everything is working as it should. We can delete different task lists here, and there you go. You can see how easy that is to actually use. And that is all we need to do to deploy our web app to Hostinger. Hostinger makes it super simple and hassle-free to get a website up and running in minutes. Don't forget to click the link in the description and use my discount code to get yourself an additional discount on your premium web hosting package. That's it for this video on making a to-do list application in HTML, CSS and JavaScript and deploying it over at Hostinger. I hope you have learned something new while following along with this tutorial. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like. If you're new around here, smash that subscribe button. And finally, don't forget to leave a comment down below. That's all for today. Peace out.